S.O.A.P.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the S.O.A.P. This episode we are going to look at Magic the Gathering. Now, Magic the Gathering is both a trading card game and a digital collectible card game. It was created by Richard Garfield. Now, it was released in 1993 by Wizards of the Coast, and Magic was the first trading card game created, and it continues to thrive. It has approximately 20 million players as of 2015, so probably a lot more by now. With it, each game represents a battle between wizards, known as planeswalkers, who employ spells, artifacts, and creatures depicted on individual Magic cards to defeat their opponents. Now, although the original concept of the game drew heavily from the motifs of traditional fantasy role-playing games such as D&D, the gameplay of Magic bears little similarity to pen and paper adventure games, whilst having substantially more cards and more complex rules than many other card games. New cards are released on a regular basis through expansion sets, which brings us to our guest who's going to tell us more about Magic and its latest release. Welcome, Shaun.
Thanks for having me, Dan, and hello to all the listeners.
All right, so let's find out a bit more about you before we get into Magic the Gathering. Tell us all about yourself.
Sure. Well, my name's Shaun. I'm a 30-year-old guy. I've got 3 kids, and I live down on the little Apple Isle known as Tasmania. I've always been a big fan of all things nerdy, games, reading, fantasy, whatever it may be. And I'm really big fan of Magic the Gathering.
Okay, so what is it that's drawn you into not just playing Magic, but continuing to play it?
That's a really good question, Dan. Magic is it's the original and the best of the trading card games. There's just a level of strategy to it, a drive to want to win, for me anyway, not for everybody, but a drive to really try and win, to get the most out of each time I play, to try new things, to try and maximize myself. And it's just a chance to kind of keep evolving as the game evolves, as they bring out new sets all the time. And beyond that, the other side of things, what they call the gathering side of things, the community, the people that are that make the game, that are involved in the game, people like myself who play the game. There's just so many fantastic people out there that just want to, love what I love, and it's just fun to hang out and chat with them.
Perfect. So I guess it's a mix of both the endless possibilities the game provides as well as the social aspect and what that opens up to people.
Absolutely.
I guess where we go from there is, when and how did you get into Magic?
When did I start? So I would have been in my late teen years. As I said, I was always a fan of card games and fantasy and strategy. And through high school, I played the Pokemon card game. I played the Yu-Gi-Oh card game. I was always playing, fantasy games. Final Fantasy was one of my big ones. And then one day, a guy that I'd gone to school with, who was good friends with my sister, and I talked quite a bit, he said to me, "Hey, look, I know you like Yu-Gi-Oh. Have you ever heard of this Magic the Gathering game?" And I said no, as you do. Ended up, he brought me some cards. He showed me the basics of the game. We played it. I think we played probably 6 days straight for 6 hours, something ridiculous. And then I discovered that EB Games in the next town over, because I lived in a small town, they were selling the packs, and I told everyone that for the upcoming Christmas, I just wanted packs of cards. I went out and bought packs of cards for myself, and yeah, it all kind of went from there, and here we are now.
Nice. So what have you personally done in the Magic community?
So, I mean, my experience with the Magic community has gone up and down, as it tends to. It's been, I said, 12 years or so now. I started with, obviously, just playing with my buddy at the kitchen table. And we then advanced that we found a community of people who played nearby, and we started playing with them on a regular basis. I have done some travelling only within Australia. There's some events that I've travelled to and played cards at and bought cards and interacted. And most recently, I've started playing a lot of digital Magic, and I've started streaming as well, which is kind of the main thing I do these days.
Perfect. Well, let's talk more about the game itself then. How can you play Magic?
So there's two main ways you can play Magic. So it is a printed card game. You have the physical cards. You could go out, you could buy the packs and hold them in your hand and play the game that way. But there's also two digital platforms available to us at the moment. The older one, which is Magic Online, and a newer one, which has only just come into open beta, which is Magic Arena. Each way of playing has its own strengths. As we talked about before, playing physically obviously gives you the opportunity to go out and be involved in the community and physically get involved and play with other people and learn together and make new friends, because that's, if you love doing this, so do they, and why not? Whereas the digital versions give you the opportunity to, sit at home on a Friday night with your pants off and play cards on the internet. Magic Arena is a lot more new player friendly, while Magic Online is kind of your much less attractive in terms of the interface, but a bit more higher level, if you will, for the people who are maybe practicing or trying to grind out wins.
So the one thing I took out of that, you mentioned Magic Online, you play with your pants off.
Yeah, why not?
Is this the normal? If people were out there watching you stream, can they expect to see you playing Magic the Online, but without pants?
I will not confirm or deny at any point in time that I am wearing pants.
So when you're playing Magic, if you go to the store or that kind of thing, do you bring your own deck, or how do you turn up?
There's actually tons of different ways you can play Magic. The most popular ways are, what you'd call standard or modern, which are your constructed formats, where, as you said, you do bring a deck of cards, usually 60 cards with a nice mix of creatures and spells and whatnot. And you'll battle against people with similar sized decks trying to do similar things. Alternatively, you can look at a format called Commander, which is a 100 card singleton format, which is probably the most popular casual player format. So if you're someone who's not trying to grind out wins and get the best, they're just more into having fun and hanging out with a bunch of people, you can play multiplayer Commander, where everyone brings these really unique decks that are trying to do unique things and really go crazy with a full card selection. Alternatively, you can play my favourite way, which is what we call Limited. Now, with Limited, the idea is that you're going to not bring a deck with you, and every time you go to play, usually in a tournament, you're going to get some new packs to actually open to build your deck at the time. And you can do this either by what we call sealed deck, which is where you start with 6 boosters and just open them yourself, or you can do, my favourite way to play, which is a booster draft. And the idea is you open a pack, take one card out of it and pass it on to the next person, and you keep going till you've each got 45 cards.
All right. So, we've talked about both the physical versions, the online versions. In your opinion, in a broad sense, what's the best way to get into Magic? Do you start with the online? Is that a better way of doing it? Or should you just start by buying a certain type of card pack and go from there?
Honestly, it really comes down to the person. If you're someone who likes getting out and trying, getting your hands on things and interacting with a bunch of people, I definitely recommend, heading down to your local store. Usually comic book stores or any kind of gaming store will sell cards. They'll usually have friendly people there offering to help and start you out, and maybe they'll even run some tournaments or special events for new players. But on the other hand, if you're someone that maybe doesn't want to get right into it, doesn't want to go out picking up piles of cardboard that you may not continue with, or maybe if you're someone who just doesn't like going outside, I definitely recommend Magic Arena. As I said, it is the new version of the digital Magic platform. It does give you the chance to play for free. It does require a little bit of grinding, but you don't have to actually put money in unless you want to. But it does restrict you from playing in the higher level. There's no super high level play on Magic Arena yet.
Now, you mentioned going down to your local store, comic book stores, all that kind of stuff. Is there a way that people can find out specifically where they can play the game?
Absolutely. So the Magic the Gathering, obviously, like any big company, big game, have a website, magicthegathering.com. If you go to that, there's a nice big button saying Event Locator. If you click on that, pop in your postcode, it'll show you where your nearest stores that run regular events or stock the product are. And to add to that, obviously there are people out there who, do have social issues or anxiety and don't particularly want to go out into the community when they don't have to. So Magic Online or Magic Arena more specifically is definitely a great way to get to play the game, experience it, and have fun with it without having to go out of your comfort zone.
So we're talking about cards, both digital and physical copies of these cards. Now, traditionally, cards have had value to some nature, not just what you buy them for. Specifically, are Magic cards themselves valuable?
I mean, Magic cards themselves inherently not really, but there are definitely specific ones that do attract a nice price tag. The game is now 25 years old, and when they first created it, some of the cards were so powerful because they didn't understand, they didn't have checks and balances. They weren't planning on it to be a 25-year game. I mean, Richard Garfield originally built it as a game his friends could play in between rounds of D&D. It wasn't designed to be what it is today. So in saying that, some of these super powerful cards that were originally created 25 years ago and are no longer being printed, they rack up money. There's a card called Black Lotus, which, I mean, a perfect condition one, you're looking at $20,000 to $30,000. These days, there is still a range of prices depending on how much the card is going to be played in those standard and modern formats, as I talked about earlier, with cards ranging anywhere from. Having a look at the latest set that's just come out, some cards are only 15 cents, and I think the most expensive one is currently has people buying for about $30 US, just based on the fact that it's going to be being used a lot and everyone's going to want it.
Okay, so obviously we're talking that some cards are better than others. Obviously, the competitive nature of Magic is quite important to it. What is the Magic competitive scene like, and how does it work?
So there's tons of levels of Magic play, and that's kind of the best part about it, is there's something for everybody. If you're someone who doesn't care about being competitive, you can just sit around with your friends, your family, and play around the kitchen table. You can make up your own rules as you go and have fun with it. From there, if you wanted to take it up a next step, there's a program that runs at any registered game store called Friday Night Magic, or FNM, and generally they'll have a tournament every Friday night. Again, you'd have to talk to your individual store to see exactly what they do, what type of format it is, when it's running and whatnot. And it continues to go up from there. Depending on where you are in the world, Wizards of the Coast, the company that makes it, runs regular tournaments called Grand Prix or GPs. These are events which usually get 1,000 plus people, depending on where you are in the world, and basically you give you a chance to take it up to the next level. They're usually 2-day tournaments. You have to play a total of up to 16 rounds, I believe, and people who finish in the top of the tournament get some major cash prizes, and they also get an invitation to the Pro Tour. Now, the Pro Tour, to take up the next step, is where the professional players play. They're the ones that are playing for the big money. I think the winner of a Pro Tour gets about $50,000 US, and really, give them a chance to show off their skills. They get to travel all around the world. They get flown out to these massive Pro Tours, and they really take it to the next level. And that's the highest the average person could potentially go. The final step above that, which people see as the pinnacle, is what you call the World Cup. The World Cup is run every year, or has been for the last couple of years now, and only the 24 best players in the world are invited to that one, with prizes, I don't know the exact number, that hundreds of thousands of dollars are on the lines for those people.
And have you personally done much in the competitive scene? Have you gone to all these tournaments?
Unfortunately, no. One of the downsides of being in Australia and the APAC region in general is that Wizards don't have a massive amount of support offshore from the US and the EU side of things. We get, well, if you lived in America, you potentially have the opportunity to go to 20, 30 Grand Prix a year, which is the third. Well, that's the next step from where I'm up to anyway. In Australia, we get 2 a year if we're lucky, and I've yet to make the day 2 cut yet. I've only ever played in day 1 of hopefully that's going to change soon, but I've never proceeded past that level yet.
All right. So obviously with this episode of the podcast, we're looking at the new release for Magic and what that brings. How does the new set affect players and the way that people usually play the game?
So they bring out a new set every 3 months, not exactly on the dot, but roughly every 3 months. For me, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big limited player, so my play depends on the sets that are currently available. Now that the new set has come out, Guilds of Ravnica, I will be drafting and playing sealed events for that set, and the old set, which was Core 19, I literally won't be playing that at all unless I get bored and want to do a little bit of a flashback here and there. But for me at my level, someone who's trying to have fun and also hone my skills a bit, I need to stay on board and just draft the new sets. Alternatively, for people who play in the constructed format standard, it is specifically made up of cards that were only released in the last 18 months to 2 years. So with this new set coming out, it means that 4 sets will be rotating out of standard and being replaced with this one set. So you'll see that the type of decks that people have been putting together for the last couple of years have to completely change because 4 times the amount of cards are leaving that are coming in. So hopefully there's going to be some big shake up to what they're seeing in the constructed standard side of things.
So Guilds of Ravnica is the new set. Obviously, with any kind of a new expansion to any game, it adds new mechanics, new cards, a lot of extra things. What does this expansion specifically add to Magic?
Good question. So Guilds of Ravnica is actually a flashback. We've actually been to the world of Ravnica twice before, and it's the story of this world is it's a world set with 10 unique guilds, defined by their colours and the way that they play. The guilds that we're visiting in Guilds of Ravnica are the Boros Guild, which is they're kind of the army. So they're an aggressive deck that have the ability Mentor. Basically means that if you're attacking with a Mentor creature and a smaller creature, you can make the smaller creature bigger. It's pretty cool. We also have the guild Selesnya. Selesnya, if you're going to define what they do, they're kind of the cultivators and they're kind of the hippies, to be honest. Their ability is what they call Convoke, and with Convoke you can actually use your creatures to cast spells rather than just using your mana, which you would normally use. You've also got Dimir. Dimir are the underground, the messengers, the assassins. They have the ability to surveil, which lets you look at the cards you'll be drawing and decide if you want to draw them or actually throw them into the graveyard and not draw them. We also have Golgari. I don't know what their actual role is in Ravnica, but they are they're kind of the death cult, if you will. If you played other fantasy games, their ability is based on creatures going to the grave, creatures dying, and powering up other creatures by having more dead creatures in your graveyard. And finally, we have the Izzet are the scientist, the experimental, the crazy, blow stuff up all the time. And their ability is called Jumpstart, which actually lets you rebuy spells that you've already cast to a degree by discarding other cards and really just getting a double hit for your cards. So a lot of new mechanics. A couple of them are old ones, but it's definitely going to be a new way to play with some things that we haven't played with before.
So at this point in the meta, it's probably a bit too early to tell, but do you personally have any thoughts on how this release is going to change the competitive meta?
To be honest, as I said, my competitive meta is not really my scene, but there are definitely some hints out there. One of the most popular and, to be honest, most annoying standard decks out there at the moment is a I'm not sure exactly what they call it, but it's a very taxing deck that basically stops you from casting your spells, stops you from being able to attack, stops you from winning, and very, very slowly beats you by making you run out of cards and spells you can cast in it. Unfortunately, that deck is mostly going to still be available. It may even get some upgrades with the new set, and that's probably going to be the main deck, and it's going to be quite annoying. There are always aggressive decks, so there's always which is quick, attacking fast, trying to do lots of damage quickly. The older version of the red aggressive deck, I believe, has lost a lot of has lost a lot of cards that it was using, and I'm not sure if there's enough to quite bring it back. It's quite possible there's going to be a goblin-themed deck, because goblins are one of the regular tribes we see in Magic the Gathering. We've got a lot more goblin cards printed. Outside that, it's a bit tricky. I'm someone that doesn't have the ability to brew up these decks myself, and I kind of have to wait to see what other people are doing before I can really see what's happening with the meta.
All right, well, we might just branch out a bit there because you've done a lot more than just Magic. So I believe you've gone from only streaming Magic and are now incorporating other games on your channel. What other games do you play, and why did you move away from just Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of reasons. Like I love Magic. Magic is the game that I'll be playing when all the other games are dead and gone. But there's a few reasons. For one, it can get a bit stale. So as I said, the sets rotate every 3 months, and as for myself, someone who opens up the packs every week and builds a new deck and does the limited format, you find there's only so many combinations of cards, and it gets a bit stale. You might go from playing. There are times when I'll play 2 or 3 times a day, especially when a set comes out like this, where I've done it all, getting a bit bored with it. I may drop back to doing it once or twice. And there's also a cost aspect as well. It's not free to play, especially where I am, because I don't want to play the free to play versions because I believe anyway that my skill level is above that, and I do want to improve and play against people that are better than me, and I need to pay to participate in those tournaments, and money is not always free flowing in the world, as we know. So I decided that I love streaming. I love getting online. I love having people that drop into my chat and say hi. I love making memories of myself that may exist when I'm gone, or my kids can look back on, or people could be like, hey, that guy was funny. So I decided that rather than be a Magic streamer, I'm going to spread out a little bit and just be a guy who streams mostly Magic. So the other games I play, I was playing a lot of Fortnite. I'm very bad at Fortnite, and again, it kind of got a bit stale as well because I don't get more than one kill a game if I'm lucky. So that'll come up sometimes, but it's definitely not my rotation. I'm always looking out for other card-based games. The other one that I really love is called Eternal Card Game, which is a game made by some of the Magic pros, and it combines a lot of the best elements of Hearthstone and Magic into one game. It's another free-to-play one, so definitely check it out if you're looking for them. And then the other thing I play is World of Warcraft. I've been a long time World of Warcraft fan. I played 6 years and got hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hours built up. But then I took a bit of a break. And with the new expansion that's just come out, one of my good friends, one of my best buddies, he said he'd never played and he wanted to try it. So we, for fun, we decided to start streaming his newbie adventure. We made some free-to-play accounts, which you could do up to level 20. And then within 3 hours of playing the game, he'd fallen in love, bought a full account, started up. I picked up my brother, one of our good Magic friends, and one of his best friends. And we decided we made a team of 5, and we've started doing a stream every week where the 4 of us who are experienced players take him through his newbie adventure, show him the world of Warcraft, teach him about playing his classes and stuff. And we have tons, like even though that one doesn't get many views, just being able to hang out with my 5 friends, and we get a couple of people dropping in the channel here and there. It's just so much fun.
Now, I admit I did a bit of research before I got you on the show, and I did find out that you've got a few other side projects. Can you tell us a bit more about some of your side projects, what they involve, where people can find them, that kind of thing?
For sure. So on top of having my stream, I do have a YouTube channel as well where I try and get most of my streams, plus a few other things like I open packs and whatnot on my YouTube channel. And on top of that, I've also got a secondary YouTube channel, which is called Creators. That's with a YT in the middle. And the idea with that one is, look, I love reality shows. I love Survivor. I love Big Brother. I love Ink Master, Taskmaster, all these things that take people who have a basic understanding or skill and challenge them, make them try harder to either improve themselves or win, depending on who they are. So I decided I was going to make one for MTG YouTubers, because there are literally thousands of people making MTG YouTube videos. The idea behind Creators is that I get 4 or 5 different creators together. I challenge them to make specific types of videos that they would normally be making on their channel anyway, but with little twists to make it fun. We're currently recording season 3. Honestly, it doesn't get tons of views because the target audience is YouTube creators, and they're usually too busy creating their own YouTube videos. But look, we have a lot of fun. I've made some great connections, and everyone that's been involved in the series says that tells me they've learned something, tells me they've picked up from where they were, they've made connections, they've all had fun with it, which is the most important thing. It's a lot of hard work, especially on my end, editing everything together, but it's just so much fun meeting people and getting to be the puppet master to a degree,
It's great hearing you talk about the success that you've helped other people have. Memories are obviously such an important part of what we do. For you, what are some of your more memorable streaming moments across all your projects?
That's a great question. Obviously, there's so many memories. I've been doing this mostly casually for over 2 years now, ever since my daughter was born. And there's a lot of silly memories you could talk about. You could talk about the first time I received a donation on the stream, or the first subscriber that joined the stream. But there's some cool things that are very Magic specific. Like the time when I was playing in the Magic Arena beta, and I was on an undefeated streak, probably like 6 or 7 games in a row. And it came down to this one point in this game where my opponent was on 1 life, and I just couldn't win. There was no cards I had that could let me win the game. All they had to do was start their turn, attack me with their creatures, and I was dead. But what we both didn't realize was that my opponent had a creature or had an ability in play that said whenever anybody plays a creature, they lose a life. And rather than just attacking me, they played a creature, and I still have the clip of it on my channel. The look on my face, the way that I reacted, I had a lot of fun with that. It was the first time I really was able to kind of show my emotion and really get in there as a streamer. That was probably my favorite memory in terms of a good gameplay that I also responded well to. Outside of things like that, the other things that have really pulled for me are the opportunities I've gotten from being a streamer and being active in the community. For example, the Grand Prix that I talked about earlier, they're created and run by a company called Channel Fireball, which is one of the biggest Magic-based companies in the world. And in April, I was honoured to be invited to be a special guest to the Grand Prix in Sydney, which means they gave me free entry to the event. They let me. They advertised for me. They put my name out there. They gave me packs to give away, and I was really a part of the team. That was really awesome. And on top of that, even just last week with the announcement of this new set release, the company themselves, Wizards of the Coast, invited me and I believe about 300 streamers to be involved in a 24-hour event, which was an early access to the new set. They gave us fully stacked accounts. They had all the cards, all the gold and stuff that we wanted to enter tournaments. And they just let us go at it for 24 hours with only other streamers. And there are thousands of people who stream Magic at a level, and being one of the ones that was invited to be involved in that, it was like just knowing that my name is out there on people's minds, just awesome.
One of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier was actually your children. How do you feel that all the streaming and things that you've done online will tie in with your kids? Do you think they will eventually watch it? Do you think you'll do content with them? How do your kids factor into everything?
So, look, that's a really good question. There's obviously a lot of talk, just in general, about how much you should be involving your children in the internet. Like my daughter's 2 and my son's 1, and I've got a 9-year-old as well. So, personally, there are times when I'd love to have them with me. If I said I could say for a fact that having kids increases your view count. I can say that. The problem is, you don't know who those viewers are. You don't know the kinds of people that are viewing. You'd love to think that everyone's happy and involved, but there could be nefarious motives. So I try to avoid getting my kids involved at the moment. Sometimes I'll put them on. If like, for example, on the 24-hour event, I was streaming in the middle of the day, which is something I don't normally do. And my daughter was very upset that Daddy wasn't playing with her. So I picked her up, put her on my knee, and for probably about half an hour, she sat with me. She watched the game. She made cute little comments, and the views increased. People saw I had a kid on the thing. They came to watch because she was cute. As for the future, I definitely would want to get them involved. I think once they're older, maybe teenagers, if we're still going at that point, because obviously that's 10 plus years away. I'd love to look at doing videos where we teach people to play from the point of view of a child. There's definitely a lot of things that you could do with the children, but again, it comes to those lines of how much do you want your children to be out on the internet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's start to wrap all of this up. One thing I would like to touch on is that growing a channel, it's very hard work. What tips have you learned through your career of doing this? What tips do you have to share with other people that might be starting out?
Yeah, look, I honestly, there's tons of things that I can and would suggest to anyone coming out. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of them. And if anyone does want to reach out to me, I'm sure Dan will include my contact details, my public contact details, and I'm happy to have a chat. Probably the main two that I would take away. Sorry, probably the main two that I would really want to put out there for people who are just starting out on looking at streaming. For one, which is honestly probably the hardest thing, is know what you're wanting to do and why you're wanting to do it. You find that people who are very wishy-washy about what they do, unfortunately, don't make it. You need to decide if you want to be a Fortnite streamer or a Magic streamer or a World of Warcraft streamer, or do you want to be a variety streamer who does attach? You can't be a Magic streamer who 6 months later becomes a Fortnite streamer. They don't tend to survive because they build an audience for Magic. It can happen, it does happen, but it takes a lot more to be able to swap back and forth. Then if you come into it, if you come into it saying you're a variety streamer, you'll build an audience expecting you to be a variety streamer. The other thing that is probably the most important thing is to build connections. You need to, again, especially if you are looking at a specific game or a specific community, you need to make contacts in that community. You need to be active on social media. You need to be reaching out to people. One thing I learned even just recently is that there's a specific PR company or personal relations company. There's a specific PR company based in Australia for Magic. So all the time that I've been talking to Magic the Gathering would have been a lot easier for me to be talking to the Australian PR team. And little things like that. And like one of my best friends at the moment is a guy I met when I first started out, because I went on Twitter and I literally followed anyone who had Magic the Gathering in their bio. And through that, I met my buddy Des Mags, and he is he's become one of my best guys. He's the guy I play WoW with. He's an artist. He's an author. He's emotional support. If it wasn't for him, I probably would have given up streaming a long time ago. And just little connections like that. Like, you don't have to try. You just have to make sure your name is out there and try and meet other people. That's probably the big two things I could talk about.
The thing I'd probably add to that is, with streaming, a lot of people expect very quick success. And sometimes you do. You make a video or whatever it may be, and instantly you just get 1,000 views. It does happen. But for the majority of people, it's a long, hard, slow road. And your first video is probably going to tank. You might get a couple of views, and that might be all. And a lot of people see that as, I failed. But you haven't really, because people don't know that you exist yet. So my advice is, stick with it, and don't just stick with it for a couple of weeks. Like, you need to be looking at more than a year worth of dedication to what you're doing. After that point, you should start to see that your views have increased from where you started. With the podcast here, when we started out, we maybe got double digits views. And if I'm being honest, it was probably a lot of people that I sent it to that I said, obviously you're a friend of mine. I did this. Please listen. We spent more than 6 months in the same kind of level of, you'd get some views, maybe a couple of random people might tune in. Maybe they didn't listen to the whole thing, maybe they did. It didn't really matter. But for that first year that we were doing content, we really didn't pick up much of the audience. And there was a lot of factors as well, because the podcast market is pretty flooded. We had basic level equipment. We run on no budget. But oddly, it was in our off season, after we'd taken our end of year break, people with families to go to Christmas, all that kind of stuff. That's when obviously a couple of people started finding the podcast, and the views really started to pick up. Oddly, our highest month was a month that we didn't release any content, but what was important was that we had enough content there that the people that did pick it up were able to build not just a once-off experience, but they're able to go through multiple episodes and, start listening, from the start to the finish. After that happened, then it just continued to happen. And we find that the more content we release, the more our views stay solid. If we ever spent a month without recording, then, our views will definitely drop. And that's the thing, is expect to start small, but you need to be constant. And if you stay constant, the people will stay with you eventually. As long as, you know, this is really what you want to be doing. People will definitely know if you're not interested in the kind of things you're doing, if you're doing it just to get your name out there or something like that. People know when you're not interested. But yeah, stick with it, go from there, and it should definitely take off.
So I just say, and to add to that, I mean, if you're streaming, you're playing a game. Games are designed to be fun. If you're not having fun with it, consider what you're doing. Maybe it's not for you. To add to Dan's point is I've been streaming casually for 2.5 years now because of my family situation, my full-time work. I don't have a schedule. It's quite possible that if I had a proper schedule, I may be a lot bigger than I am. But I'm at the point where 2.5 years in, I think I've got about 300 followers, a very small handful of regulars that show up for multiple streams a week. But I'm still having fun with it. And that's all I care about, to be honest.
Yeah, and with that, I would say fun isn't just doing what you're doing and having fun. If you're only having fun when you're recording, you're not going to make it far enough because recording's only one part of this. The rest is all about editing. It's about advertising. It's about being proud of your product and showing everyone. And it is. Sometimes the hardest part is all the hours you spend behind the scenes that people don't see. You might spend 6 hours, 12 hours editing one podcast and, you know, only have an hour to show for it. And sometimes people just can't handle that kind of level of dedication to getting something so small out compared to the amount of work you're putting in. But, you know, you spend all that time doing it and then you finish the year and you look back at the year and suddenly you've got all this amazing content that you've done. It wouldn't be possible if you didn't put in that extra hard work, and it's something you have to enjoy because you can't just spend, you know, 12 hours every week doing something if you really don't enjoy it.
Definitely.
Well, we're pretty much at the end of this episode. Obviously, we've covered a lot: magic, streaming, everything that you've done personally, Shaun. Is there any last thing that you would like to add?
I mean, the only thing, obviously, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a plug. So, obviously, the viewers can find me. I stream and create YouTube under the name of MPNumbers. It's M for magic, P for player with the word numbers. Twitch.tv or youtube.com/. Yeah, I think that's about me.
All right. Well, thank you, Shaun, for joining us on this episode. We here at the S.O.A.P hope our listeners have learned a bit about magic and the streaming business. Now, make sure you check Shaun out on his Twitch streams and his YouTube channels. We'll also try and include his links on everything. Or maybe, Shaun, we might be able to get you to add the links yourself, post on one of our Reddit threads or that.
Sure.
So speaking of links, we were given a bit of feedback to plug our own links a little bit more to make them easier to find. So we might spend a little bit of extra time ourselves doing that on this one. Our best form of discussion comes from Reddit, and that's where we'll get Shaun to definitely include his links. Now, you can find us on reddit.com/r/the S.O.A.P. Nice, easy one to find us. You can find our videos on there, including our unboxings, let's plays, and our audio-only podcast. You'll also find them on YouTube at www.youtube.com/c/the S.O.A.P. Find us on Facebook by searching our full name, which is the Slightly Offensive Australian Podcast, not our abbreviated name. Or find us on SoundCloud by searching our abbreviated name, the S.O.A.P. And finally, on Twitter, we are at the S.O.A.P Podcast. So I am Daniel, and on behalf of the S.O.A.P, thank you everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Bye.
You have been listening to the S.O.A.P Podcast. Join us again soon for another episode, and don't forget to hit us up on all the social media platforms because we love hearing from you.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.